and welcome to Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. Today, I'm joined by Martin Willemink, the co-founder and CEO of Segmed. Martin, hi, good to meet you.
Hi, Lee. Nice to be here, and thanks for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, and we're really looking forward to learning a lot more about Segmed because it's a big topic at the moment. And like super high level, this is all about healthcare data, isn't it? And then specifically healthcare imaging data. Tell us more. What's the problem that you guys solve here with the company mission, and perhaps what inspired that?
Yeah, definitely. So, in order to get to innovation in the research and development space, you need to be able to have access to data. So, for example, AI, of course, one of the most important pieces is to actually have good access to diverse and heterogeneous data so that you can develop good AI algorithms. So data is a very important component. And if you look in general in the healthcare space, life science space, there are a lot of companies out there that can solve this problem of providing healthcare data to researchers and developers. However, if you look at what kind of data, it's typically health records like EHR data. It is claims data, labs data, genomics, and so on. However, myself, I have an imaging background, and imaging actually is a very valuable asset as well, and is really important for research purposes, but it is really hard to handle images. Images are large in file. It's really difficult to de-identify them. So there is a lot of different components and challenges that comes to imaging. So that's really what we are focusing on at Segmed, is we're bringing medical imaging data, de-identified, to the R&D world, so to researchers that need it for AI development or need it for other research purposes.
Got it. Okay. So give us a little bit of an example of a use case there then.
Yeah, definitely. A typical use case is, let's say, a medical device company. They want to develop an AI algorithm to detect lung nodules, so small lung tumors, on a CT scan of the chest. So what they want to do is, let's say a radiologist is reading an exam, and before they start reading the exam, they can already see, oh, look, the AI already detected 6 nodules. You should look at them. And by the way, the probability that this is going to be malignant or cancer is X%, right? So that's something that they want to develop. In order to do that, they need to have a lot of data. First, they need to train the AI algorithm, which means they need a large volume of non-specific data that contains lung nodules, that has normal exams, that has a variability in exams so that the algorithm can be trained. Once the algorithm is trained, then you go to the FDA or you get CE marking or something like that, where you want to show them, the regulatory bodies, like, hey, this algorithm performs very well in a representative population. So, for example, what we're seeing, a lot of our customers are using Segmed platform for FDA approvals. So they go to us and they say, okay, we want a data set that's representative of the US population. So you need to have different geographic regions where the data needs to come from. We're talking about CT scans here, so you need to make sure that there are images that were acquired on CT scans from Philips, GE, Siemens, Canon, and so on, right? So you need to have a lot of diversity and heterogeneity in the data in terms of technique, also in terms of patients, what's the ethnical racial background of these patients. So all these kind of aspects need to be taken into account. And this is the validation part where you have typically smaller data sets, but that have much higher quality, that are really hard to build together. So that's the second phase for this use case, where, okay, first they train the algorithm, then they need to validate the algorithm. And once the algorithm actually is deployed, you want to make sure that the algorithm keeps performing well. So there's a third component, which is the monitoring of the AI algorithm. And for that, you also need more data. Let's say over time you figure out, oh, the algorithm is not working very well on Siemens CT scanners or something like that. I need to have some more Siemens scans to actually improve the performance of my algorithm. So they need that kind of data to further improve the algorithm, and then they can redeploy.
Interesting stuff. So the product itself, then you mentioned it's a platform, and then how does that actually work? Well, is it a web application? Is it a
Yeah, it's actually a whole pipeline of technology tools that we have developed. So it starts at the healthcare providers who we are helping, because a lot of healthcare providers know that they have patients that they want them to be involved in AI development, for example. They want to make sure that once they use an AI algorithm, it will actually work in their health system as well. The best way to do that is to actually share your data so that this data is used in the development of these AI algorithms. But anyway, it starts at the healthcare provider system. So what we typically do is we install a virtual machine within the environment of these healthcare providers, and we do the first step of image de-identification there. So we plug into the IT systems. Then we de-identify the data. So de-identification of imaging data, as I mentioned before, is pretty complex. There are a lot of algorithms out there, a lot of models or tools out there that can de-identify text-based information. But here we need to de-identify text-based information, typically the radiology report that describes the image. You need to de-identify the DICOM file. So DICOM file is where the radiology data lives in. And this consists of two components. One component is the pixels. So this is your X-ray, CT scan, MRI scan. So that needs to be de-identified. So sometimes there's burnt in information, like a patient name can be in there. That needs to be removed. So the pixels need to be blacked out. And then there's the metadata of the DICOM file, which is a table that contains information like the social security number of the patient, the date of birth, and all kinds of other information. Also relevant information like, hey, what reconstruction algorithm was used or what acquisition technique was used. So that you want to keep, but you don't want to keep the patient information. So we de-identify the text-based information, the pixel-based information, and the metadata-based information. So that's all part of the technology stack. Then we have a component where we standardize the data. So when I was previously, and I think we're going to get to that, but I was previously at Stanford, and if I would pull an X-ray of the elbow, there was a high probability I would actually get an X-ray of a different body part, just because classification of medical data and the clinical routine is not very good. But if you want to do research on X-rays of the elbow, you need to make sure that you actually have X-rays of the elbow. So standardization and classification of data is very important. So after we de-identify the data, we standardize the data, meaning that we make sure that we're looking at the right modality, the right body part, and then we're using something called ontologies, where we're making sure that we can actually also identify like, hey, what disease is present or what diagnosis was made here on this specific exam. So first we plug into the IT system, then we de-identify the data, then we standardize the data, and then there's the last component, and that is our cohort builder. So this is a web-based environment where our customers, who are the companies that need the data, they can log in and they can build a cohort of de-identified and standardized medical images. So let's say in the use case that we mentioned before, you're a company and you want to develop an AI algorithm for lung nodules, you need CT scans of the chest. Let's say you need 1,000 CT scans of the chest. You want to have 500 normals and you want to have 500 that actually have lung nodules. Well, that's a data set that you can build on that platform. And then once you have built that, you can license it and you can use it for your research purposes. So those are the different components of the pipeline, as I mentioned before, of our product.
Love it. Yeah, thank you for that. That's great insight. You touched on it. You're at Stanford. What is your story? Are you a scientist by background? Share a little bit more on your background and how you've arrived to set up Segmed.
Yeah, definitely. So I started in the Netherlands. That's where I'm from. So that's where I went to medical school and where I did a PhD in medical imaging. And I worked for 2 years as a resident in radiology at an academic hospital back in the Netherlands. But I got a little bored of reading chest X-rays in a dark room all day long, and I wanted to be more on the innovation website, on the innovation side. And I thought back at my PhD time very often when I was in the residency program, and I was like, "Ooh, I wish I was doing research, more and more research." So I applied for a grant, and I got a 1-year grant to go to Stanford to do a postdoc there. So after 2 years of residency, I came to the US, to Stanford, spend a year there. And the idea was after that year, I'd go back, finish my residency, be a radiologist in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But after 1 year, I just got so inspired. I loved the Silicon Valley. I loved the Stanford environment. I got another grant, so 1 year became 2 years. And after those 2 years, I actually got a faculty position at Stanford, and I stayed 3 more years leading the cardiovascular imaging research at the Department of Radiology there. Had a really good time. And while I was at Stanford, a lot of people there, they do all these innovation things. And I got so inspired. I thought, yeah, I want to do something big too. So that's when I actually came up with the idea idea of Segmed, and I found my co-founders at a program from the Stanford Graduate School of Business, which is the MBA program at Stanford. We didn't do a full MBA program. We only did a 10-week part-time program, but it was amazing. And that's where I met my co-founders. And after that, we decided to incorporate Segmed. So it all started at Stanford about 5.5 years ago. And now I'm full-time in the company and really part of building this exciting innovation.
Oh, sure. Thank you for that. And I always ask this next question because we've got a big network of fellow founders that tune into this show. It's rarely plain sailing with startups. Share a few of the challenges that you've encountered and how you've managed to navigate those over that 5.5 years.
Yeah, I think the first one was because I mentioned I came up with the idea of Segmed. Actually, the original idea of Segmed was different from what we're doing now. I was I was doing a lot of research with medical images. I was consulting for an AI startup. I saw, okay, what I actually was doing was I was labeling and segmenting images. So for an AI startup, what I did was I was doing pixel-based segmentation of images so that it could be used for AI training or validation. And I thought, oh, there are probably more people like myself, who want to make an extra buck and, do some consulting for these kind of companies. So maybe I should, make some sort of centralized platform, like an Uber platform where people can make some extra money by doing these kind of segmentations and image annotations for these AI developers. However, we found out there's a lot of competition in annotation platforms. The market size is relatively small. So we decided already really quick to pivot towards not just the segmentation and the annotations, but actually providing data as a whole, which I knew was a bigger problem, but I thought we would never be able to solve that. But that's actually the problem that we decided to move on. So that was the first kind of like pivot thing. Another thing is once we move towards providing data, then you need to work with health systems. And especially 5 years ago, it was much harder to actually convince health systems that they should contribute data to innovation purposes than it is now. So that's one thing that we actually, I would say the biggest challenge for us was always to make these partnerships and extend the network of healthcare providers connected to the Segmed network. So one thing that helped us was the time, because now people are much more open for innovation and people see, okay, this is actually something that is good for the world and for the healthcare space. So we are more open to it. And another thing that we did is we actually hired 2 people that were working on Wall Street. And you would say, oh, why would you hire somebody that works on Wall Street? But they were advising CFOs and other executives within healthcare providers financially. So they knew them very well and had good connections. And having people that were trusted on board in our company helped us a lot with actually solving the problem of getting more healthcare systems on board. Because once you have the trust, that's really important, of course. So that's also another component of how we were able to navigate those challenges.
That's interesting, isn't it? Hiring those people from outside of specifically the healthcare world that have those connections within it. Probably not a conventional method, but certainly something that's worked for you.
Yeah, we got a little lucky. We just found one person and they were going to be our CFO and they were like, oh, by the way, I have all these connections. And we're like, oh, wow. Maybe you should be in charge of extending our network as well. And that worked out well. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So Martin, what comes next? Anything exciting that you guys can share for the listeners?
Definitely. Yeah, we just raised our Series A round. So in total, we raised a $10.4 million oversubscribed round. Before that, we had already raised about $10 million. So now we've raised in total about $20 million. This $10 million comes at a good time where we believe we found product market fit in the radiology AI space. So yes, we're going to further expand our sales team. But more importantly, I think there are 2 exciting things that we want to use this money for. First is most of our clients so far have been coming from the medical device AI startup kind of space. They want to use imaging data for AI development. But we're seeing there's a big opportunity in the life science and biopharma space as well, where they are already used to having all kinds of data, but they're not used to having imaging data at scale. So we want to be the guys that bring medical imaging to the biopharma life science space. So that's the first exciting thing, where we want to extend our market from just radiology AI to biopharma life sciences.
Interesting. And what's the time frames from that one then?
The time frame. Oh yeah, well, so we actually already started with our
Okay.
first customers in that space. We have our first customers, but there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of education in the market to be done. We actually just hired a chief commercial officer that has a lot of experience in this space. So this will be really helpful in that expansion towards the biopharma life science space.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think you were going to say something else as well.
Yeah, the second exciting thing is we've been mostly licensing data to our customers who need the data for AI development and for research purposes. What we're seeing is that the tools that we have developed of the pipeline that I described before, of plugging into the IT systems, the identifying, standardizing, and then the cohort building, all those different tools are actually relevant to especially larger companies as well. So what we want to do more is not just license data, but also license the tools and the software that we have developed. So that's another exciting area where I think there's a lot of opportunities that we really want to double click on more in the next few years.
Absolutely. Seems like you've got a great platform to build on. Martin, thank you so much for joining us. It's all we've got time for. Guys, this has been Martin Willemink from Segmed. Martin, thanks again.
Thank you for having me. It was great.